Alright, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about familiars, specifically the best familiars that you should be aiming for at various points in the game. Now, just because I know somebody will ask, I'll do a quick run through of the familiars that I get. But basically, when you're going through the game, very quickly you'll have enough gold to always be able to try to persuade everything. So you should always throw a persuade out there. You don't know when you'll need something later. And for me specifically, I was a tank character, so I went as far as I could, and I picked up Remy T, and then I ended up stabling him because I hung out at that area for a while, and I scooted on through. Currently, right now, I'm trying to catch a bunch of Gugamens and any Gobbies that I see. Gobby is a special one that can show up in any of the quest flags or dungeons randomly. And then, of course, right now, what I'm currently using is two of these guys stabled up to +5, and that's what's working out for me. And, of course, this is the Gugarum I've got in Expedition, so you can see him in the Expedition videos, or the video dedicated to him, also Skort from the same Hollowed Expedition. And then here we have Stratos from Raid 6, who has his own video. As far as my stable, I really keep it simple. I'm a tank character, so I don't use a lot of tanks. I did pick up a deflect tank, and I also picked up a rare familiar Findlin. He's good for PvP events, and Grolem, a common familiar. Every once in a while, such as this week, we'll have a PvP week where common or rare familiars have double stats, and they are what you want to use. Now, I've done a video going in depth on all of the mechanics with familiars, and how the stats work, but just to do it quick here, common will have a 60% stat bonus of your stats. Rares will have 70% of your stats, epic 80, legendary is 90%. And then when you fuse them, so when you upgrade the familiars, you'll get a 5% bonus, and you can see them there. Adding duplicate familiars into your stables will give a 2% bonus, which is pretty significant. As you get up into the game and you have more total stats, that 2% will be a lot bigger. Capture rate is the chance to prompt the familiar to appear for Persuade. It does not change your Persuade chance, so that's just the chance that they will give you the conversation. Persuade chance, of course, you cannot change that. And here is a table that shows you the capture rate, but there are a few familiars that specifically have a lower capture rate. These are mainly the epic familiars that you see in dungeons. Specifically, Bully, he is a legendary that you see in dungeon, but he's just that much harder to catch, and so he's kind of like the holy grail for some of the longer term players. So here on the wiki, you have a list of the familiars. This will show you where they are located, and then over here, you've got a list of the fusions. Even if you're a new player, you still want to aim for rare fusions because you're going to get extra stats, and you're also going to have an extra bonus right here. So when you fuse or upgrade the familiars, they get this extra little bonus here, as well as another attack. And so Shramps is the one I'm showing off right now. He is the tank that all early players want to go for. He's very easy to get. He's got a good block chance. He's got a ton of health, which also means that his attack is quite low. So his attacks don't really matter since they're so low. But you want him because he is a meat shield that you can put in front, and he's very easy to get. And so Gramps and Shrump right here. This guy is really easy to get. He is in Zone 1 in Dungeon 2. You can farm that dungeon repeatedly until you get this guy. And when you put him together with Gramps that you can get in Zone 2, Dungeon 2, you fuse those two together, you get the schematic in any of the dungeons where these familiars live, so any of those dungeons listed will have a chance to drop the schematic, which is like a blueprint, and you put them together. Now, if you want a healer, Borlon is your go-to. He's got a nice 15% damage bonus. The damage bonus also applies to his healing skills, so here you see he's got a spread heal, and he's also got a damage furthest, which hits for a ton of damage. So he is really easy and the best that you want to get. If you decide to be a tank character, which is more difficult for newer players, but if you do decide to get it to be a tank character, it would be a great option to run two of these. And if you ever decided to fuse them, they would both have the bonus from that. Now you take Bob, you take Merlin from Zone 1, Dungeon 2, and from Zone 1, Dungeon 3. You can catch these guys, and that will get you your Borland. Now, scrolling down, I was able to progress through most of the game just using the early guys. I was a tank character myself, so I just used a couple Borlands. Again, I would not recommend trying to stable these guys until you have a good amount of stats, because if your stats are really, really low, 2% of nothing is ultimately nothing. Now here, Larious, he is a very common recommendation because he's very easy to get, and he's also a deflect tank. And so deflect means that an attack that comes towards this character can be deflected back to the attacker, and he is really easy to get and use for PvP. You can also use him in some of the more difficult flags that I'll be showing in the future. But all of his components come from the same location. So you can catch all the familiars, if I can find them here. You can catch all of these 3 guys in the same Zone 6, Dungeon 3, and that also means that the schematic for him will drop in there. So if you're very unlucky and you don't get the schematic, on the bright side, you're still farming a bunch of those, so you could potentially stable him if you wanted to. And here, Skort. So on my other account, my free-to-play account, I use Skort. He is very easy to get. He has a good drain attack, and he's also got damage reduction. So drain attack meaning that the damage that he deals is going to be used to heal him. It's another way to keep him healthy. And then to get him, you just need Scorpius as well as 10 of those mini potions that you end up getting just through playing the game. Scorpius coming from Zone 7, Dungeon 1. So if you get stuck in that zone, which you most likely will, well, you can farm him and get yourself a new tank. Remy T is equally easy to get. He's got a damage bonus, which again works towards his damage and also towards his spread heal, which is very good. And he is also very easy to get. You just need Rexy and MET. MET is a common familiar, and let's see, Rexy right here, just past him, is from Zone 3, Dungeon 1, so you can get him very early into the game. And the bright side of Remy T is that Remy T can go on to a legendary familiar. So let's scroll on through. Those guys should pretty much get you through most of the content. If you're having difficulty and you have those familiars, you can either consider stabling them or just getting your stats up a little bit. Wimba was very popular previously when there weren't a lot of options out. He has a 300% crit damage, and the downside of him is he's got low health, and that crit damage usually means that a lot of his healing is over healing, and he doesn't really have a damage target skill because as it stands right now, the 2% SP skills are just not that efficient. Now, Korgs is very popular for PvP. He's got a lot of speed. He's also got dual strike, and he has a damage target skill for 1 SP, so it's really easy to get the first attack in PvP and snipe people out. Bobodom was very popular, although I don't like evade tanks because the percent chance of evade is very low, and so if he gets hit 3 times in a row, he typically dies. Rolesker is popular for the damage and rage, and I've done a video on how enrage works. Remoraid is going to be your #1 go-to healer familiar outside of expeditions or special events. You see Remy T goes into Remoraid. He's got a heal target. He's got a big damage on the damage furthest skill, and that can be somewhat used to snipe people out. Unfortunately, again, his damage target skill is 2 SP, so you're not going to use that one a ton. Another good choice is Valcke. This is what I use. Empower is a chance to do double damage. You can see the component familiars there. The downside is his health is very, very low, so he can be sniped himself very easily, and he's also very slow, which is somewhat negative for PvP. But he's got a fun skill set. I do a lot with him, and I've been very successful with him. Rombolio, I believe, was the first mythic familiar added into the game. He is another evade tank. He does have redirect, which is awesome, but he's got evade chance and no damage reduction, so he still ends up getting chewed up in combat. Stratos was one of the more recent releases. He is in Raid 6, so all of his components are in Raid 6. He has low health, but he's got a really good skill set, and so he is set up basically as a bait tank if you want to have a tank that has less stamina to bait out attacks such as attack weakest. Stratos is your guy, and I recently made him, so you can check him out in another video. Wallogder is kind of my holy grail. I've kind of been chasing him a little bit. I'm just kind of waiting to see what tier 10 has to offer. Zavalby is very difficult to get because you have to get Bully, and as mentioned earlier, Bully has a very low % chance to be persuaded. But low health, really, really fun skill set. That damage random skill is probably one of the most fun things to do in the game as far as the combat system. I've also seen Kane Smack do a ton of damage. You just have to be careful with Wallogder and Valcke. If they get reflected or deflected, since their health is so low, they can actually one-shot themselves. Now, looking at World Boss, if you do Orlag, you can get Valcke. Valcke is another good choice for newer players if you're going to spend a lot of time in the World Boss. He has a spread heal, he has a damage target, but he's also got really, really low health, and he can, of course, go into any of these. Torleg is also similar to Wacom. They have a somewhat similar skill set and stat distribution, and they're both going to be used to go into Wall Ogre, as you saw. And then Meaty is probably the best tank right now outside of Expeditions that you can farm freely. He has got a ton of health, which means his attack is so low that his attacks are basically meaningless, but he's a giant meat shield, as the name implies. And since his health is so high, he can make a better use of the Absorb to keep himself nice and healthy. Now, Omo is for the Netherworld world boss. He has a spread heal, and he can go into Drazig, which is another legendary healer, also a good choice. 22.2% is a good amount of health more than the other guys I've talked about, so he's a lot better at taking a hint, and he's got a good skill set, as you can see here. So another solid choice. And then the legendary, the mythic that you can get from here, Drenath. He's pretty cool in his own right. He's got some really good bonuses. You've seen me talk about Team Rage in previous videos. Another one coming in at 20% health. The only problem with him is that he is no longer a healer. He is a damage familiar, because his heal is now a 2 SP heal. So unless they change this in tier 10, you're really not going to get a lot of value out of his heals. So that wraps it up for all of the content you can access at any time. Here you see me kind of scrolling through and highlighting some of the more interesting familiars that you can get in Invasions and Expeditions. Invasions and Expeditions come around a couple times per year, so when they are re-released, I'll be putting up a video talking about it. I'm pretty eager talking about Goblin. I've been saving up some Gobbies for him, as well as some of the other familiars here, but I will show that when they become available one more time. But that'll do it for this video. Stay hyped for tier 10. As always, I appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you in the next one.